Let me bring in Ken. Let me bring in Ken, Nick, because he hasn't spoken in a bit.
I was thrilled to hear Liz say that you guys are in favor, you want diplomacy to work. The question I would have for you is, what is it about what we're doing now that you think is inadequate? What more do you want to do? Because my guess is not only would we sign up for it, my guess is the Obama administration would sign up for it too.
I don't know if the Obama administration is going to be inviting the Cheney Senor team in to prescribe their policy on Iran, but hey, you know, stranger things have happened.
Message for you.
You know, change is coming to America.
It's the Middle East.
Sorry.
Nick, did you want to follow up? Because I have another question, or I can go down.
I think that Dan has not given President Obama sufficient credit. I heard him say during the campaign on multiple occasions that he believed that we should leave the use of force on the table. We haven't seen the full articulation of the policy. I have every reason to believe it's going to be very hard-headed and very tough-minded. It'll include all the things that all of us are talking about. So to suggest that somehow this is feckless, toothless, soft, ineffective diplomacy, when it's likely to include all the elements that Liz and Dan have suggested, I think is a little bit premature.
I don't disagree. I hope President Obama comes forth with that. He hasn't done so yet. My only point is, if you are going to have a credible use, if you're going to have a credible threat of force, you have to articulate a timeline, a trigger point, and a credible threat of force. President Obama has done all the things that you have hoped he would do, except that last piece. So I don't know why anybody in the Iranian regime or among our allies would take that threat that you're positing as serious when the president himself is not.
Nick, last year during the campaign, you wrote in support of the president's offer to talk to adversaries. You wrote a piece in Newsweek in which you said we should have enough self-confidence to talk to our adversaries. Why is it a matter of self-confidence?
There is this notion in parts of our political spectrum that we should not talk to governments with which we disagree. I don't think that is in our self-interest. And I think we ought to have the self-confidence to understand that whoever represents the United States of America at the negotiating table is going to be tough-minded, is going to try to
You're
achieve...
not hearing that argument from this other side of the table today. That's not the point.
Not today. But certainly I think one of the weaknesses of the Clinton approach, and frankly the approach in which I was involved, was that we didn't have enough self-confidence to get to the table and trust ourselves. I think we weakened the diplomatic effort in 2006 by not attempting to talk to the Iranians. So I think the United States needs to engage those governments with which we disagree, Zimbabwe,
Liz,
and Iran, and Burma, governments like that.
Liz Cheney.
Give the Iranians. How much time would you give the Iranians? So we've got to have this tough-minded diplomacy that you promise is coming, although I have to say the resolution says it's going nowhere now, just to remind people in the audience. But how much time? I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Now.
It says is going nowhere. It's present tense. But at any rate, but it's a serious question.
Tense into that.
No, you can't actually.
Yes, you can.
Liz, if you
It's a
in
serious
favor of
question.
diplomacy too, let us throw it back to you. How much time would you give it?
I would give it very little time.
How much?
And I would say, I would give it basically enough time that we could actually sort of test out the extent to which we're serious about using force. I mean, my own view is the window is closing pretty fast here. I would say, we're very close to the point where the Iranians themselves may, in fact, be near the point where any action that we take is insufficient to prevent them from actually gaining the value and the benefit of having at least the threat of a nuclear program.
So is that 6 months or 12 or 18?
I'd say
But the
I'm
question was
closer.
actually put to you.
I know, that's why
Yeah.
I'm putting it back to Liz, because she's saying she's in favor of diplomacy too.
But do you have an answer to
John,
it?
maybe the problem is just 3 months. Maybe Liz believes 6 and we believe 9.
No, but it's not just time. Time is, as you heard me say at the beginning, time is key. Now, my patience has been tested, and I think probably is closer to the breaking point than Nick's is. And I think that's a responsible position, because I think to take the position that you guys are taking, which is, yes, it's definitely going somewhere, although it hasn't really started yet. And once it starts, it's going to take us a long time because, to do this professionally.
That's not our position at all, Liz. Our position
said
is
all
that
of those things.
No. That's absolutely untrue. And you can go back and look at the transcript.
Nick
What
has
we
said-
said
we're getting
was
to transcript
that
review. I
that
want
we
to move
need
on
to
to
play this
another
out to
question.
get the
Gentleman
allies
in the
on
second
board
row.
for the tough sanctions.
Gentlemen in the
What
second
makes you
row has been
think-
very
but
patient.
What makes you think?
If a game changer is required, and it seems to be, would Russia support effective sanctions if we rethought our position on missiles in Eastern Europe? And are there similar quid pro quos we could offer the Chinese for them to support effective sanctions? And would that not change the whole situation?
Ken, that's up your alley.
Dan, you've asked a critical question, and this is part of what has to happen with the diplomacy. We don't know the answers to those questions. But frankly, if we can make some of those deals, if we can do some old-fashioned horse trading, and different people may have different views on what deals we should cut, but if we can do that to get them on board, maybe we will. I think we probably ought to. But we're never going to know until we suss them out, until we go to them and ask them, what's it going to take?
Situation. We have to remember this. We're in a situation where we have offered not just to talk. You know, we offered to remove our objection to their WTO accession. We gave them spare parts. We lifted pieces of our sanctions. You know, we've offered a whole range of things to them. And so for us to now be in a position where we're going again to the Iranians, to say to them, okay, well, that didn't work, but how about if we do this for you? How about if we do this for you? Each time the Iranians refuse to take the steps that the international community has said they should take, Nick and Ken seem to think we ought to go back to them again and say, okay, well, that wasn't enough for you. What about this? And I just think that's a dangerous situation to be in when they are getting closer every day to having a nuclear weapon.
The question was, what do we do with the Russians and Chinese? So we're not talking about constantly going back to the Iranians. What we're talking is going for the first time to the Russians and the Chinese.
It is a key point. If in response to the Iranian intransigence, we decide that we are no longer going to support the missile defense system that in fact has helped to protect and will help to protect some of our most important allies in the world against the eventuality, the potential of an Iranian nuclear weapon, that to me is a concession to the Iranians. Now maybe, it's a concession we're making to the Russians, but it's a concession to the Iranians.
Would not make those concessions right now either. I agree with Liz on this. I mean, you've asked a great question. The Russians and Chinese should be interested in stopping an Iranian nuclear weapons development program because of their own interests. I think what's happened is they haven't quite believed that we're ready to give diplomacy a chance. Therefore, if we can show a little faith in diplomacy for a little bit of time, I think we're more likely to get them on board than otherwise. But I wouldn't trade the missile defense systems in Eastern Europe with the Russians.